Welcome, everybody, into an all-new episode of the Combat Sports Report here on SportsGrid. I am Brian Ciano. Thank you so much for joining us as we take our weekly look at everything going on in the world of the combat sports. We have MMA, we have bare knuckle fighting, we have all things that are going on, and we're going to talk about it all here on SportsGrid with you. Once again, appreciate you tuning in. Coming up later in the show, we're going to talk about upcoming fights in the PFL at the end of November. We're going to talk to the flyweight contender Dakota Ditcheva, of course, the PFL Europe flyweight champ, now trying to do it here in the big show as well over in Saudi Arabia. Going to be fighting against the longtime veteran of combat sports, Talia Santos, former UFC fighter. A lot of people, have watched her fight. Going to be maybe her toughest yet, but we'll see how Ditcheva is feeling as she gets ready for that challenge. I kind of feel like she's going to be, just ready to go. We'll see what she is feeling now as she gets ready and training for that fight. We'll also talk to another person in training for a title fight, and that is the featherweight champion of the BKFC, King Kai Stewart. Let's reach in with him out in Montana, see how he is doing as he gets ready to fight Jimmy El Terra Rivera for that title. That's going to be in the beginning of November out there in Montana in his home area. He gets the title fight on his home ground against Jimmy Rivera, of course, former UFC contender, longtime MMA and combat sports vet. So both these guests that we're going to have on today facing some of their toughest challenges yet in their career as they fight for titles in the PFL and the BKFC. We'll also talk about what the BKFC is coming up this weekend. There's two cards coming on. We'll talk about the fights out in Denver that you can check, where there's a cruiserweight title fight between Chris Camozzi and Sawyer DP. We'll touch on those fights out in Myrtle Beach that unfortunately you will not get to see till after the fact, as those are some dark fights here that we talked about a couple weeks ago. No live broadcast, but maybe we'll get to touch on those later on, see some great action on the Instagram and other avenues for the BKFC. And then we're going to talk about a card coming out in California. Of course, Lights Out Extreme Fighting, number 20 for them coming up. Of course, Sean Merriman and his promotion putting on yet another great card. We'll talk about some of the fighters who are going to be involved with that. But first up, let's break down what we saw this past weekend over in the PFL Super Fights Battle of the Giants pay-per-view. This was a fight card we were looking forward to. A lot of people have been looking forward to for a while, at least, especially the top couple fights there with the return of Francis Ngannou, his first fight ever in the PFL, and he did not disappoint. The Predator going against Problema Ferreira, the current champion of the PFL, and he wins that title. He dominates him. He is the PFL super champ there at heavyweight. It was surprising, of course. Ngannou hadn't fought in 3 years in MMA. Had his foray into boxing that we saw, those two fights against Tyson Fury and Joshua, neither going his way. And he comes in there against the champion, Ferreira, who had won 4 in a row, 13-4, going to be bigger, longer. And he just dominates him, makes quick work of him with a first-round KO victory, 3:30 into the fight. As you see there, Ngannou using that grappling. We talked about that maybe with the long layoff, he'll use that grappling that we saw for the first time in the Cyril Gane fight, try to work his way back in. I thought that might have made it so that he worked his way back into the second and third round and felt comfortable, but no, he felt comfortable right away. Ferreira, for his part, seemed a little cautious, maybe a little worried about those big shots of Ngannou. We know how dangerous the Predator can be with that one-punch knockout power. Didn't seem to be coming in there as aggressive as he has against some of his other opponents, and that cost him because right away, Ngannou comes in there, he throws some shots, eventually gets the takedown, and then just gets to a position where he starts to unload on Problema. The Problema had problems from the Predator. He just, starts to level on him, throw those big shots, maybe even got a couple extra that didn't need to happen. Some people were a little bit critical of the refereeing there, that maybe should have been ended earlier. When you got a guy like Ngannou on your back, it's pretty much fight over, and we saw that as he gets the ground and pound victory against Ferreira. Very emotional after the fight. We saw him talking about his son, who he unfortunately lost earlier this year. And, it was very emotional for him to get back in there and win this fight for Kobe, and makes his return to the world of MMA and showed how much of a badass he is. And it was impressive to everyone, even to his old nemesis that he never actually got to fight in the UFC, and John Bones Jones, who, put out there on social media that he watched the fight and, that he saw the great performance by him and, giving his props to the Predator. I know that's the fight that we all wanted to see in the UFC, unfortunately never got to, but John Bones Jones is, of course, taking notice of what Francis Ngannou did in his return to MMA, as we all were. Great fight for him. Of course, we thought Ngannou would win that fight. We thought it might have taken a little longer, so trying to get the extra value and go in the over 1.5 or winning it in 2 or 3. Unfortunately, did not pan off for us, but a nice win there for Ngannou, who was the heavy favorite. Then you had the women's featherweight title on the line with Chris Cyborg going against Larissa Pacheco. Of course, Pacheco had been on a huge win streak, 10 fights in a row before that fight. Of course, she had those fights against Kayla Harrison that she lost before the third one where she gets her revenge, going against an absolute legend in Chris Cyborg, who had won her last 8 fights in MMA and 4 fights in boxing. Now it's 9 in MMA as she gets the victory by unanimous decision, 49-46 on all 3 judges' scorecards. She was dominant in this one, and maybe in a way that we didn't expect, going maybe a little bit of the Predator style there and throwing the takedowns that we didn't see coming, respecting the power of Pacheco and saying, you know what, let's not stand and trade the whole time, because we saw that there were times that she got opened up. You saw the 2 cuts over the eyes for Cyborg there. She was the underdog, the slight underdog at plus 116. I couldn't believe it. I was riding with Cyborg, and she gets the victory there. She landed Pacheco 108-91 over the course of the fight. But probably the bigger thing that gets her the victory is the 4 takedowns. We saw that, in the highlight clip there. Grabbing her, throwing her to the mat. Not something we usually see from Cyborg. She's one that likes to stand and trade a lot. She, of course, has that in her arsenal, but not something that you would have expected per se, especially coming from a bunch of boxing fights that she's had recently. Maybe was more focused on the stand-up. No. She said, I know what I can do against her and where I could dominate her. She respected her opponent, knew how dangerous she was on the feet. And while she did land some big shots, of course, over the course of the fight, said, there were moments that she was going to, just take the edge off and not, let her opponent stand where she's comfortable. She's going to put her on her back, and that worked out to her favor. And she gets the unanimous decision. Of course, very happy, as you see there in the clip that we have here. Was cut up a little bit over the eyes, but still battles through, gets the unanimous decision win. So great job by her to get the title. She was very happy about getting that belt. You think that someone who's been there, done that in just about every organization in MMA, would just, be another fight, whatever. No, she was very excited, very happy to win that title. Then you also had the Bellator title between the middleweight with Johnny Pressure Eblen versus the assassin Fabian Edwards. These guys were fighting a rematch as Eblen beat him in Bellator before for this title. Edwards was trying to come in here, maybe be a little less cautious, maybe trying to get back into the winning ways against this opponent and erase that off his record. Didn't look that way for most of the fight. Now, of course, if you watched it all the way through, Edwards came out in the 5th round, and if he fought that way for 1 through 4, it might have been a different fight. He had a great 5th round fight. Didn't have that with the first 4 rounds, and Eblen just dominated him. In the first fight, Eblen got a couple takedowns, but ends up dropping with the right. This fight was all about the base, all about what we know of Eblen, and that is wrestling, wrestling, wrestling. 15 takedowns in this fight. Just dominating his opponent, throwing him to the mat, not always keeping him there and getting great shots, but still, those takedowns, they add up. The more you go on, you start throwing your opponent around. If he wins on the feet, okay, good for him. If he's not letting the big shots that put you on the mat and you're tossing him like a rag doll, that works in the way of Eblen, and it did. 48-47 in all 3 judges' scorecards. We knew that Eblen would win the fight. We even told you last week, watch out for it going to points. Watch out for it being, if it's not going to be by decision, then at least late in the fight for Eblen. So those were some good bets that we placed on that one, and good bet on Eblen to keep that belt as he did so against Edwards, as he has a pretty dominating performance as far as tossing it around. The judges didn't give him as much love maybe as he should have. I still thought it could have won 4-1. He gets it 3-2. Other fights, a big upset by Kadima Magomed that we didn't get to talk to about last week. Coming into that, those 2 guys making their PFL debuts. He was a huge underdog there. Motion is the one who gets the victory. Plus 625, he gets that. And also a big upset in Paul Hughes over the mercenary, AJ McKee. Hughes gets the victory there by split decision. So good upsets to start the card, and then some big, great performances by champions to finish it. Thanks so much on that one. We're going to talk when we come back to one of the PFL's upcoming stars, Dakota Decheva. Welcome back into the Combat Sports Report here on SportsGrid, and we're continuing to talk about the PFL, not about what we just saw, although that was awesome. All the fights were great. Awesome pay-per-view to be checking out, but there's going to be some other fights coming up in Saudi Arabia in just a couple weeks, and one of those names that you better be watching for is, of course, Dakota Dacheva, who is going to be fighting for a title there. On that great card, it's going to be a stacked card of fighting for titles, and make sure you don't blink when this lady is in there because she is one of the baddest in the PFL. Dakota, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate your time as you're getting ready, I'm sure, training in camp, working hard for this fight. And, we appreciate you joining us. But first, for those people who may not know enough or haven't been watching enough to know more about you, obviously you were someone who born over in Manchester and, did a lot of fighting over there, came up from the PFL Europe. Now over in the regular PFL, fighting for the flyweight title here. What was that like for you to make that big change, obviously, to go from training and living and, where you've grown up and where you're accustomed to now, living in Florida, training in Florida, working out at ATT. What was that big change like for you, and how did you, come to make that decision as you got ready to make the next leap in your career?
Yeah, I mean, it was a very big decision for me to move. My mum has been my coach for my full career in Thai boxing, even very much involved when I transitioned over to MMA at the start of my career. So it was definitely a really big move. I think the weather in Florida and the place made it a lot easier. I absolutely love living here. So yeah, it was a big move though. I really made sure that it was the right decision by traveling a little bit around the States to different gyms at the beginning just to see where I settled the most. And as soon as I came to ATT, I just knew exactly like what the fact that I wanted to stay there. I really fit in at the gym. The area I really loved, which was really important. It felt very much like home, which was important to me because having been at home my whole life and never moved out, I've always lived with my parents and my siblings. It was I needed that homely feeling, and I really got that at ATT. So yeah, the move was big, but it's been a massive blessing on my career. It's really helped, and yeah, that's kind of what's got me to the point I am now.
And that's great to hear. I love what you're saying there, that mom's been the coach the whole time, because that's not something you usually hear a lot in combat sports. Usually when it's like, oh, I want to be like my dad, or my dad did this, and I was following him, and mom was kind of like hesitant, didn't want me to do it. So for you to say, like, my mom's always been my coach, she's the one pushing me through, she's the one helping me be the badass that I am, that's always nice to hear. That's how did that come to be? Was it just you grew up watching her and what she's did in combat sports and decided that you wanted to follow in her footsteps? How did it all come to be? And was she as supportive? Because a lot of times with dad, it's like dad and his little girl, a lot of them are like, what, I don't want her doing this. Was it different with mom when she's like, yeah, if you want to be a badass like me, then let's go?
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning, my mum didn't want me to be a fighter. She's been through the fighting scenarios herself. She knows the feelings and the hard work and the sacrifice you have to make. So it wasn't really something that she necessarily wanted her kids to do. I have two brothers as well, and it wasn't something that she ever really wanted them to do either. But I had a few fights when I was like 4 years old because she has her own gym in Manchester, so I was around it and kind of training with the kids and things like that. But then from like the age of 4 to 13, she put me in like loads of different sports. She literally tried everything to keep me away from fighting, which I did do a lot of different sports. But when I was like 13, 14, I came back to it myself, and that was like something that I decided to do. And she has definitely coped with it a lot better than my dad. My dad, on the other hand, isn't a fighter. He's kind of had to put up with it with my mum. He helped her obviously when she was fighting, but then now he's got it with his own daughter, and it's hard for him. He doesn't cope with the nerves as well as my mum does. My mum kind of just gets the feelings of like she's fighting again, so she knows how to control them. She's been through it that much. But with my dad, it's a total different story. I do really feel sorry for him.
How much of your being a fighter and being tough as you are, how much of that was growing up with brothers? Was that a situation where you kind of had to hold your ground and show them that they weren't going to bully you and push you around? And what was it like being as obviously there's plenty of girls that grow up with brothers, and you got to have that extra edge, I think, especially if they're older, and they're trying to be the tough one, they're trying to push you, they're trying to impose their will. What was it like for you? Was it a little bit of you just, what, I'm not gonna let you tell me what to do, I'm gonna smack you back?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been quite like a tough tough girl anyway. Probably used to call me a tomboy when I was younger. I was a little bit half and half. I used to put like my football kit on, my soccer kit, but then I'd have like a pair of plastic high heels that I'd put on with it as well. So there was like a rough side to me, but I was also like still quite a girly girl. So I've got an older brother that's like 2 years older than me. He's one of my coaches now, and we used to fight and stuff when we were younger, and then we kind of grew out of it because we took it to the gym. We used to spar with each other, and that's kind of how we settled all our arguments in the gym.
Well, you talk about, put on the kit and about, football for you, soccer for us here in the U.S., but I saw that you're a big Man City fan, obviously growing up in Manchester. Yeah. You only have two choices, I'm sure, one or the other. Me being a New Yorker, it's the same kind of thing with a lot of teams. You got to pick one of them. What's it like for you? I mean, obviously, you're still young in life and in your career. Man City's been badass. Do you even remember a time that they weren't one of the best teams in the Premier League?
Yeah, I mean, my whole childhood was growing up with City probably not doing the best and everyone giving me stick. Like, even at school, everyone was Manchester United fans. So I've kind of grown up like getting a lot of stick with City, but then I've also gone through like the transition where now we're like winning everything and it's kind of like we're on a high. So my family have been City fans like through and through, like 3 generations. There's been nothing else, just Manchester City fans. So to see us on top now and be able to, have a good relationship with Manchester City, like they support me and everything, and they have me down at the stadium. It's just a pretty much a dream come true for me and my family as well, because my family are like season ticket holders. They go to every game, so it's just crazy that this has happened and that they're like supporting me now.
That's awesome to see. I'm sure it's nice being a fan base of someone that always wins. I'm one of those that always picks the losing side, unfortunately, so it must be nice. But speaking of someone that always wins, that is your record right now, still undefeated. But I was reading an interesting article about how before you went to ATT, I'm sorry, you were not necessarily believing in yourself as much, even though you were undefeated, even though you were dropping all your opponents. You still didn't necessarily believe that you were the badass that you are.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't train with a lot of girls in the UK. I trained with the boys, which I still do now. I still spar a lot of lads, but it's kind of, they're always that little bit stronger than you. That physical strength is also, sometimes a bit much. So coming over to ATT and being able to train with a lot of girls and actually gauge where I'm up to and be able to, hang with the tough girls and the top girls, that's kind of what gave me the most.
We'll be right back here on SportsGrid on the Combat Sports Report and talk more with Dakota about some of those girls that she's trained with and some of the ones she's beaten up that have gotten in her way so far in the PFL. We are back here with Dakota Dichevo, of course, the PFL European Flyweight Champion, now taking her way through the PFL in the U.S., trying to become the champion in flyweight coming up at the end of November in Saudi Arabia. And that stacked card of all the championship fights. It's going to be awesome. Can't wait to watch it. Make sure you do. We're going to talk to her about that fight in just a minute. But you talked about, coming to ATT, you talk about stacking yourself up against the women there, seeing where you stand. And obviously, when you're undefeated, when you got 8 knockouts, you're stacking up pretty high, I'm sure. But I saw you trading with former PFL champion and Kayla Harrison. And, what has that been to train with some of the people who are the best and have shown that they are the best in combat sports? How does that continue to boost your belief in yourself and your ego as you get ready to challenge for another title here in the PFL?
Yeah, I mean, it helps, give you confidence working with people like that, but it also kind of humbles you a little bit. I was getting a lot of stoppages, undefeated, but I still always, have to remind myself that there's girls out there that are just on my level as well and even better, so there's always stuff to learn. And that's kind of what I really enjoyed coming to ATT and finding people that can really challenge me, people that are better than me. And that's kind of how I've developed so much this year, is working with, people that are giving me tough rounds. And, sometimes you can't win everything. That's kind of the mindset that I have. You've got to be able to lose in the gym, and that's what makes you better in the cage when you go out to fight. So that's kind of what I really found at ATT.
Well, it's good that you're doing losing in the gym because you're obviously not doing that in the cage so far. Undefeated, as we said, dropping all your opponents. You just beat Jenna Bishop to get to this championship fight against Tyler Santos. Now, obviously, she has a lot of experience. She's been in the UFC. She's been all over. Very experienced fighter. What do you look for that you think you hold the advantage in now when you come against her to try to take this title and become the PFL featherweight, the PFL flyweight champ? Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big fight. It's an amazing fight for me. Tyler's, obviously very well respected. She's come from the UFC into PFL, and she's had a good few wins over that side, and she's looking to obviously come over here and just dominate the whole thing. But then now she's got to face me in the final. So I totally respect her. She's got a lot of experience. I know how tough she is. She's obviously been 5 rounds before as well, so that's another thing she's going to have a lot of experience with. But I don't feel like she's ever fought anyone like me. A lot of these girls underestimate me. Everyone in the tournament previously that I've fought has underestimated me. They've all been talking about me, but I'm just going to go out there and do what I've done the whole year and just shut the tournament down and bring home a belt.
Well, obviously, and he said she's been 5 rounds. You have not. A lot of first round, second round finishes, so you haven't had to go the distance. How ready are you for that if you have to go in there and try to go all 5 rounds? And what's it been like for you to go through this tournament format? Do you like it where you have to kind of win and keep going like you would see more in different sports than MMA typically? It's not usually what you see. Usually it's like you have the one fight and then the next one, it is what it is when you get there. What do you think about the tournament format? How has that been for you to have going in a lot part of your career now between the PFL Europe and the PFL here in the US?
Yeah, I mean, I've really enjoyed it. I've enjoyed building like a little bit of a fan base over here. I felt like coming over to the States was what I needed, to kind of build up that fan base. And the tournament format really suits me. Obviously, I'm still young. I'm only 26. I don't have a hard weight cut either. I think a lot of the other girls, kind of struggle with making weight every 2 months or so. Whereas for me, I still feel strong all the time. I'm not in a really hard weight cut or anything. And I think that's one of the main things that people underestimate. And as well, I just live and breathe this sport. So I'm in the gym all the time. Like finishing a fight and then going straight back to the gym hasn't been difficult for me because it's just something that I love to do and I'm constantly training all the time. So I feel like I've dealt with it really well. And yeah, the only thing I would say is that I haven't been able to go home, spend a lot of time with family, do other things. It's kind of just been in the gym all the time. So there's pros and cons, but I've really enjoyed the season for sure.
Well, it's good to have that kind of focus, especially on this level of fight that you have. But obviously, you do have some time for other things. I know that you also have your own clothing brand there, the Dare Fightwear. Tell us about that. What made you want to get involved with that, and what are you trying to accomplish, outside of fighting with this?
Yeah, that's something as well that I haven't really had a lot of time to put into, but that was something that I set up. It was like a sportswear brand, a sports fighting brand, where you could wear it's a skirt but with shorts underneath. It kind of just shows my personality a little bit, and I wanted to, build a brand that was kind of, showing that. And I like to fight in a skirt. I haven't yet done that with PFL, but I'm hoping in the final they're going to be able to make me a new skirt that I can fight in, and then it'll showcase kind of what that brand is all about.
Dakota Decheva, thanks so much for joining us. Make sure you go and watch her fight November 29th, the Stack Card. Watch her try to become the EFL flyweight champion. Thanks so much for joining us on the Combat Sports Report.
Thank you.
Welcome back into the Combat Sports Report here on SportsGrid. Going to switch gears here and go over to the BKFC. A lot going on. We got fights coming up this weekend. 2 fight cards that we're going to talk about later on. But first, we're going to bring on a man we finally get to see back in the squared circle again soon. recently announced going to be going back out to his home area of Montana to fight. Hasn't been there for a while. Had to try to travel south to Miami to defend his belt a couple times, but now getting to do it in front of the home fans, and that is King Kai Stewart. We bring him on now before his fight November 9th against Jimmy Rivera for his featherweight title. Kai, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate the time. I know you still got a couple weeks out before this fight, but how are you feeling as you get into the main part of fight camp and getting ready to go on and defend this title one more time?
Yeah, we're back down to the nitty gritty. This is going to be the hardest week of camp, and then we start to taper off and just worry about weight. But we are. I'm feeling really good. This is where I need to be, and this is all destiny, and it makes you really grateful for it. So gratitude is the best attitude. We're narrowing down. We're in crunch time, and it's good to be back.
Good to see you back. I saw recently, you post that, you got re-signed again to the promotion. Of course, they're going to want to keep their champions always, but what was that like for you? I'm sure big difference in negotiating than when you were, getting your other contracts, and now when you're the champ and you kind of have a lot more bargaining power than was. How did things go with working with the BKFC and getting this new contract that you have?
I am super blessed to be working with the BKFC. I was brought on as a ticket seller. I made my pro debut with BKFC. It was just supposed to be a one-off. I wanted to use the big names in BKFC to get to the UFC one day, but that is not the case no more. I am super proud to bleed black and yellow, and it's a step in the right direction. We have Conor McGregor now involved with the promotion, really bringing a lot. And I just have to go do my job on November 9th, and I think that we're going to be in a really good spot to really solidify ourselves, because this three fight deal solidifies us. But whenever I knock Jimmy's lights out, it's going to be to the moon for King Kai, and Bare Knuckle has themselves a superstar. So let's go.
Speaking of Conor and what he's doing with the BKFC, I saw you obviously when you get to be the champ, you get to maybe relax a little, have a little bit more enjoyment of holding that belt, and you certainly have done that. I saw you and Conor chugging there. I think it was that out of Sturgis, hanging out with the man upstairs now, and Conor McGregor. And what was it like getting to be around him and talk to him and hang out with him a little bit?
Growing up, I didn't idolize any sports guys, and then about 2014, 2015 came around, and then Conor McGregor. That's whenever Conor McGregor was making his rise, and I instantly was like, dang, I would love to do what this guy does one day. And that was the first guy that I ever really idolized as in combat sports, and now he's my boss. And not only is my boss, we've got to share certain moments, especially in Sturgis. We've messaged back and forth. He actually just collabed on a post with me with Proper 12 yesterday, and I'm super grateful for the opportunity to shine in front of my literal idol. I'm living a lot of people's dream, whether it's in combat sports or something totally different. A lot of people will never get to perform in front of their idols, and I do. So it's super cool, and I can't wait to see what we all can do with BKFC, from their promotion side to my fight side. Like, let's go, let's blow this thing up.
You talk about the promotions. You talk about the being part of the BKFC and what you've done. Been able to do with them and what they've done for you. But obviously being a champion, you get to be a representative of them as well. We saw that a couple weeks ago while they were traveling over to Spain. Actually, you were heading out, I believe it was in Vegas, with Mr. Universe thing going on out there, and you were out there representing the BKFC. You see walking around with the belt. And what is that like for you now? As you're still a very young guy. You're still very early in your career, but to be able to have that kind of cachet yourself, to where you're out there and you're representing the brand, and that there may be some kids that see you, whether it be fighting or at these appearances and things like that, and start looking up to you and use you as an example that you're talking about when you talk about Conor McGregor or other fighters.
Yeah, being a youth wrestling coach for the Humble team in Montana and a high school wrestling coach for Great Falls Central Catholic, I really want to. I want to be that guy that I had whenever I was a youth wrestler growing up and didn't really have a lot of direction in my life. So it feels really good being able to be called, even though it was during camp. I was called down. Hey, you're one of the faces of what we're doing right now, and we love how you interact with the crowd. Let's bring you down. And it was my very first bodybuilding convention, and it was absolute blast. And I can't wait for the next one. I hope that I could still. I want to be that guy in BKFC because I love talking with the fans. I do. I will sit there and take pictures with every single person that wants to. And being so young, 24 years old, it's a youth movement, baby.
Yeah, you're out there, hanging out with the fans. We saw you the picture there. You had the crown out there as well to go with the King Kai. Even other pictures out there, nicely, dressed up, looking very fly there. Although I have to say, as nice as you looked, Taylor Sterling had custom outfits made that were represented. So I think you still fell a little short there, but still looking very good and represented the brand there. I mean, where was your superhero outfit that she had going on? The BKFC didn't have those made for everybody?
Yeah, I missed the memo because they told me dress your part, dress how Kai Stewart would dress, and I dressed exactly how Kai Stewart would dress. And I get there, and yeah, Taylor Sterling had some awesome BKFC related outfits. I would love to get a BKFC suit with not like anything crazy, but with the hints of what BKFC really is in it. I think that would be an amazing fit. So if anybody knows where I can get that, hit me up.
Well, we look forward to seeing what you come up with down the line with that. If you can connect with any of those people, that'd be great for some of those appearances. But now you have this fight coming up against Jimmy Rivera. It seemed like from a lot of your posts that was there a little bit that took a little while to make this fight happen, because it seemed like this was destined for a while now. And then from some of your posts, kind of calling him out, telling him to sign. Was there a delay in getting this fight together before we finally get it now out in Montana in November?
Yeah, I think that he's bitten off more than he can chew, just like all these other guys. Now, Jimmy Rivera is different. He is a ex-UFC guy. He did amazing in his career over there. He has tangled with the best, went decision with the best, and so it's a lot different than what I have faced before, and he brings a certain level to the game that I want to test myself against, and that's why I pushed for this fight. And honestly, I've cleaned out the division of all the other homegrown stars that BKFC have brought up from Miami, and made it look easy, so I deserved my big name fight. And yeah, Jimmy Rivera, it took forever, but behind the scenes we knew it was going to be finalized. But I wanted to pressure him. I wanted to be like, hey, let's go. We're taking too long. Montana's my house, and I knew that he was coming over here. And come on, have some respect. Let's get straight to the point. You're a legend. I look up to you. You're an amazing, you seem like an amazing guy outside of the sport. But like I said, it's a young guns movement, and I'm here to stay. And like I said, I bleed black and yellow. I am now here on a new 3-fight deal, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. So I'm super excited. November 9th is where I truly get to shine. And I know I've had a lot of decisions in the past, but it's part of growing, and I'm growing now, and I'm going to put his lights out.
And we look forward to seeing that fight. It should be a great battle between you guys, and you get it at home now. How great does that feel to get to defend it at home after having to go to Miami for a couple fights there with their home crowd? Now you get to have your people there. You even I see get to have your girlfriend on the card as well, making her BKFC debut. How excited are you to be performing once again in front of the Montana faithful?
Montana is the greatest state in our great nation. So hats off to Montana. There's a lot of Irish roots in Montana as well. So I look forward to putting on a show. Maybe we can get Conor McGregor to come enjoy God's country. And as for my girlfriend, she's next. Dakota Rough Roads. She's going to be a superstar. So can't wait to perform. And Montana, you're in for a freaking treat.
King Kai Stewart getting ready to defend his featherweight title once again, getting it to it in Billings, Montana, November 9th. Make sure you check it out with BKFC. It's going to be on DAZN, just like the Spain card. Make sure you get ready to be able to watch that fight. Thanks so much, Kai.
Thank you.
Welcome back to the Combat Sports Report on SportsGrid. Great to catch up with King Kai Stewart. Excited to see him get back in the squared circle, defending his title once again. That Billings, Montana card, November 9th. Should be a great fight between him and Jimmy Rivera. I was hoping it was going to be local here to the New York area where we are, because I know that Jimmy Rivera out here training, living, working as a cop. So I thought they might try it, especially when they announced that Philly card. But it looks like people are going to have to travel from here to go follow him if they're going to see him try to get that title from King Kai Stewart. And he's going to have his Montana faithful behind him. Should be an awesome fight. Looking forward to seeing that. Speaking of awesome fights and title fights, we got one coming up this weekend. We actually have 2 fight cards coming this weekend. One you won't be able to see, of course, that dark card in Myrtle Beach that we talked about a couple weeks ago. But I'm sure we'll get some, after action footage and reports that we can check out later on. But let's first talk about the one that you will be able to see. That is this Friday, 9 o'clock Eastern, the 25th, and that is for the Cruiserweight title out in Denver, starting at the top, Chris Camozzi, Sawyer DP. Now, as we said, Cruiserweight title. That's right, the one that was formerly held by, of course, the juggernaut, Lorenzo Hunt, out now on his suspension, so this belt is up for grabs. And so they bring in Camozzi, who just fought for that title and unfortunately lost to, of course, the juggernaut, and they're going to put him against the number 3 ranked guy in that division. That is Sawyer DP. No better idea than putting up the top-ranked guys to go fight for it, right? That's what we're going to get. Number 2, number 3. Camozzi, of course, older there, but 37 years old, long-time veteran of the UFC. Has 2-0 in the BKFC before that fight against the juggernaut, so 2-1 now. He had those 2 great knockouts out there in the Denver card, then gets his shot against the juggernaut, and a very different fight than everyone expected from both fighters. Very cautious, very respectful, but not much action between 2 guys that have shown the propensity for dropping their opponents. And it went to a decision, not the fight that anybody wanted. People probably were very upset with it by the end. But still, now he gets another chance to erase that from our memories, to get back and give the performances that we've seen from him. And he will do that against Sawyer DP. DP, of course, 30 years old, so only 7 years younger. 5-2 in the BKFC, all knockouts. Wins or losses. This guy's going in there for a finish. He is not going for a decision. He's on a 3-fight win streak right now. Last fight, of course, was his win over Keegan Vandermeer by a first-round KO. So he is in a great position right now and just doing what he needs to do. I saw him talking to our man Brian Sosha about doing it for his daughter, who is a big inspiration for him, who he teaches wrestling to. So he is there trying to win a belt for his daughter and show her what daddy can do. But we have seen both these guys have some ferocious power, as you see there. DP dropping his opponents. Both these guys have shown that if you get in there and you're not ready, they are going to steamroll you. So which one is going to control that? They're both aggressive. They both like to come forward and put it on you. So which guy is going to be the one that comes off the scratch and drops the other? That's going to be a big part of it. It's going to be who controls the action, who controls and imposes their will. Camozzi's going to have a little bit extra height and length there, so that could be an advantage for him, of course. If you're going to go against 2 strikers, I'm sure you want to be the guy who's a little bit longer to try to make sure you get your punches in before the other guy can hit you. So that one is going in favor of Camozzi. DP has been awesome. He's been on a run, and obviously the last one that we saw from Camozzi was not the kind of performance that you expect from him or want. I'm still going to roll with the hometown guy, though, in Camozzi. I'm sure DP is going to be pretty people from Montana over there in Denver, but this is his home area. He has the pedigree and the experience from all his years fighting at all different levels, from the UFC to to boxing, kickboxing. This guy is not going to be shook by his title shot here, and I think he's going to be pushed to be a lot more aggressive and get back to what we've seen than he was in his fight against the juggernaut. I think it's going to be a tough fight. You'd have to think, obviously, conventional wisdom says it goes out and ends quickly. I don't know. Both these guys are tough. I think we might get to 3rd, 4th round before we get the finish, but there's going to be blood. There's going to be big shots, and both guys are probably going to have to get off the mat at some point, but it's going to be a great fight. Can't wait to watch that. Also, at welterweight, you have Brandon Gertz versus Cameron Jumpman Van Camp. Gertz is going to be the hometown guy again, and once again, going to be the one who's a little bit older, a little longer in the tooth, as he is 39 years old. 1-1 in the BKFC, lost to Jake Lindsay, then beat Christian Torres. Both his fights ended by stoppage in the first 2 rounds. So another guy who's going to come in there, look to push the action, a long-time Bellator veteran, going against Cameron Van Camp, the 31-year-old, who is also one of the one in the BKFC. Lost to Holloway and then beat Micah Terrell. Former UFC fighter, a brief appearance for him in the upper echelon of the MMA. So both these guys coming from the world of MMA, both coming in there and wanting to get a finish or be finished. No one's going to come in there and try to go for the decision. It's going to be a lot of action between these two, but Van Camp is going to hold a big advantage in the size. 5 inches taller, 5 inches longer. So you're going to give me that, and about 2 guys that want to drop the other one, I'm going to, again, take the extra length. This is even more of an advantage than we just talked about with Camozzi, of course. 5 inches, that's tough to get inside. Now, Gertz is a guy who's going to want to get in there, get a brawl. We've seen that. He's not a guy who's going to necessarily stay at length, but still, when you have that advantage and you're younger and you're quicker, that could be a big advantage for Van Camp. So I think he's going to take this one. At strawweight, you have Sydney Sundance Smith going against Kat Pabrocki. This is a big fight for Sundance Smith. We talked to her a couple weeks ago. She came in there, getting a lot of publicity in the BKFC world, a lot of hype after her first fight, where she, of course, took out the Krasian, ending the win in a great fight, looked awesome. Then kind of went into a contender fight against Melanie Shaw pretty quickly, lost that fight. Then came back and on short notice went up in weight to fight Crystal Pittman out in LA, and it went terribly for her because obviously short notice, up in weight, not exactly the situation most fighters want to be in. Credit to her for taking it, but you saw from the pictures and the videos afterwards that she took a beating for the trouble. And I had a great time still because she's always very positive, always very into what she's doing, and awesome experience for her, she felt, except for the fight part, of course. She loved hanging out with Mario Lopez and some of the other people out there in LA, but was not the victory she wanted. She needs to get this right now. She's 1-2 in the BKFC. Can she rebound, get back to 500, show that she should be in the conversation for possibly getting into the rankings and title shot down the line? She needs that kind of performance, and she gets a newbie here in Pabrocki, who's making her BKFC debut. She has boxing, Muay Thai, and MMA experience. I know she owns a gym. She, coaches, so she has a lot of experience in the fight game. Just 1 year younger than Sydney Sundance Smith, but BKFC is a totally different beast. We've seen that, and we've heard that from many of the fighters who have gotten into this. They expect one thing, and it's completely different. So I think Sundance holds the advantage in that, and I think she's going to be motivated. She knows this is such an important fight for her to get herself back into the mix of things. You also have great fights going on between Dylan Schultz and Derek Perez, which is going to be a great battle there at bantamweight. We have a flyweight battle between Andrew Legend Strode and Superfly. Of course, Chancey Wilson needing this win. He's been on a little bit of a loss streak after losing to Aguero by KO in November. Down 3-3 in the BKFC. He needs to get back on the winning ways and show that he is a guy who should be feared in that division. Lots of action. And then, of course, we didn't even get to talk about that Myrtle Beach card. It's going to be a great rematch between Bushaw and Caruso. Can't wait to watch as much as we can in the BKFC this weekend coming up. When we come back, we'll wrap things up here on Combat Sports Report. The Combat Sports Report as we wrap things up here on SportsGrid. Thank you so much to all our guests who joined us. Great to talk about everything that went on in Saudi Arabia with the PFL, the great pay-per-view, awesome fights that we got to watch out there with the first super card there, super pay-per-view, the Battle of the Giants. Looking forward to seeing some of the BKFC action we have coming this weekend, and looking forward to seeing that Kai Stewart fight, especially down the line in November. Him and Jimmy Vera should be an awesome matchup that we've been waiting for a while. But now let's get into what we also have coming up this weekend in the world of MMA, and that is Lights Out Extreme Fighting 20. That's right, Lights Out 20 this weekend out in Long Beach, California. You can go check out if you're in the area. Make sure you get some tickets, go check it out, or you can watch it live on their site, lightsoutxf.com. You get the tickets there. You can watch it there. All action involved. Make sure you check it out. Sean Merriman always doing what he can to boost up some of these great MMA fighters and help get them towards their dream. He just had recently another fighter sign to the UFC, and he always celebrates that, them moving up into even other organizations and continuing to follow their dreams. But he'll continue to do that with some of the guys he has fighting this week. And, of course, one of the top fights there is going to be at welterweight between Christopher Alvarez and Alberto Gonzalez. Alvarez 4-1 on a 3-fight win streak right now. The last 2 fights by knockout. His second fight for Lights Out here, he's going to be going against Gonzalez, 3-6. Lost his last 3 and 4 of his last 5, and 2 of those losses, the last 2 and 3 of the 4, were by KO. Former Bellator fighter, so he has experience in some other promotions as well. This is his debut in Lights Out. So, obviously a guy who's a seasoned vet who knows what he's doing, but has had some problems with the chin lately. We'll see if going against Alvarez, who wants to go get that knockout, is going to be something that costs him and drops him down to 3-7. But Alvarez, of course, looking to improve that record, looking to make a name for himself and maybe even get his name start to be spread around MMA circles for some other areas as well. It's going to be awesome to see those guys up there at the top of that card. You also have a featherweight battle between Javier Garcia and Mauricio Aguilez. That's going to be a battle between longtime combat veterans here. Garcia 11-5, 3-0 with 1 no contest in his last 4 fights. It's probably going to be, one that goes towards going the distance or maybe a late submission by these guys, as lots of his fights have gone to decision or been a submission victory. Aguilez 11-9-1, lost his last 2 fights. This is his second fight with lights out also. Lots of decisions on his record. So these guys are going to be patient. These guys are not going to be goaded into, getting knocked out or doing something they don't want to do. They're going to be battling each other to see who can have the control of this, and a lot of it might be of who has the top control on the mat. We'll see as these guys who have been around for a while get to match up there on Lights Out XF20. Also, a featherweight battle between Ethan Ewing and Mauricio Carrillo. Ewing 5-2, won 5 fights in a row. That's right. He started out his pro career 0-2, but now has won 5 in a row. This is his 4th fight for Lights Out, and all 4 of those wins are by KO. So he's a guy who has found his groove as far as knocking people out and dropping them, and he'll be trying that out now against his opponent there in Carrillo, who's 3-3, 500 record for him. He lost his last 2, 3 of his last 4. He has a fight in Bellator under his belt. Second fight in Lights Out. He's going against a very hungry opponent who's on a very heavy win streak here and looking to get that knockout finish once again. Also at featherweight, you have Shane Collins versus Safulo Dashlakeva. Collins 1-0, 9-2 in his amateur career. First fight in Lights Out. His opponent, Dashlakayev, also very early in his pro career, 0-0. That's right, making his pro debut. 3-1 in his amateur career there. Lots of wins by decision. So these guys, you'd like to see and look back and see what they're going to do, but you don't know. The amateur's a lot different than the pros. It could be a big jump for a lot of these guys. You saw a guy like Collins take a long time to make that pro jump, and now he's doing that. Can he make it 2-0, or will his opponent get his first victory in his pro career? It's going to be very interesting to see these guys, see how they develop, see what kind of seasoning they have. Obviously, Collins going to have a lot more than that with a longer career in amateur, you would assume, but still very new faces to the pro MMA scene as well as Lights Out, and we'll see what they can do for their first time showing us their wares here. And the catchweight, Richie Palomino versus Saad Ul Hassan. Palomino 6-6, Ul Hassan 8-8. Both guys 500 record here. Palomino's lost his last 2, 4 of his last 5. Last fight was for Lights Out, and it seems like he's going to be another guy who's going to be interested in the ground game with the way that his fight record has gone over the years, the way his fights have shook out a lot of decisions, a lot of going for submissions. Ul Hassan he lost his last fight. He was on a 3-fight win streak before that, with one of those coming with Lights Out XF. So we'll see if he can get back into his winning ways, or if his opponent is going to be the one who gets over 500 there. Both these guys, of course, hungry for a win. Might be another one that you have to watch and wait for the judges to decide, or if something happened later in the fight for someone to slip up, as both these guys have shown their propensity for being on the mat. But another great week of talking to you about everything going on in the world of combat sports. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll catch you next week here on SportsGrid on the Combat Sports Report.